And in just hours, the man behind Jeffrey Epstein's so-called sweetheart deal is set to testify before the House Oversight Committee. Former Labor Secretary Alex Acosta will take questions behind closed doors as part of the House panel's investigation into the deceased sex offender. Back in 2008, Acosta served as the U.S. Attorney in Florida and approved a secret non-prosecution agreement that shielded Epstein from any federal charges. As part of that deal, Epstein pleaded guilty to state charges involving just one underage victim. He served 13 months in jail with work release privileges. Let's bring in MSNBC legal correspondent and former litigator Lisa Rubin. What else happened beyond that? Epstein serving 13 months with Alex Acosta's career, and what questions are you hoping to hear answered in the hearing today?
Well, Mika, as we all know, Alex Acosta was Trump's original choice in his first term to be labor secretary. He didn't survive for very long because of revived questions about his tenure as the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. It was in November of 2018 that Julie K. Brown at the Miami Herald first published a three-part series about that sweetheart deal and about the questions that victims and survivors of Jeffrey Epstein still had, including the fact that they had been walled off from this non-prosecution agreement. Right. But in terms of questions that members of House Oversight might have for Alex Acosta, look, these were events that happened 18 years ago. Alex Acosta gave a transcribed interview to the Department of Justice 5+ years ago when they were investigating him and 4 other members of his office to see whether they committed professional misconduct or ethical violations in bringing to bear this sweetheart deal. Theoretically, his memory today is going to be worse than it was 5 years ago. So one of the things I would want to know if I were a member of the House Oversight Committee is what Alex Acosta says today and how it compares to what he said 5 years ago. And there's no evidence yet that the members of the House Oversight Committee have the transcript of that interview even in their possession. If that's the case, then today's interview might be of much utility as Ghislaine Maxwell's interview with Todd Blanche. That's not to compare Alex Acosta to Ghislaine Maxwell. I want to be really clear that the Office of Professional Responsibility at the Department of Justice concluded Alex Acosta did not commit professional misconduct, that he was within his rights, exercising his authority as the U.S. Attorney to come to this agreement. But what they did say is that he exercised terrible judgment. And I want to zoom out, if I can, for a second. When Alex Acosta became the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, he was 36 years old. He had had a number of really impressive positions in the Department of Justice and in government, but one thing he had never been is a line prosecutor. He had never been involved in criminal prosecutions. He had served, for example, in the Civil Rights Division of Justice. He had completed a clerkship at a federal appeals court. He had worked at Kirkland & Ellis for 18 months, but he had never before worked in a U.S. Attorney's office, and he was ill-equipped to be the person overseeing this. I would submit to you that we are living through a time right now where the consequences of having people at U.S. Attorney's offices who are more distinguishable for their loyalty than for their experience in criminal prosecutors' offices, we are seeing those consequences come to fruition every day. And that will be instructive, I think, in this interview.
Lisa, that's such a great point, and it's such a great warning for us today when you look at all the inexperienced people that are being placed all over government, based not on competence, based not on knowledge, based not on skills, but based solely on loyalty. I will say in this case, though, even an inexperienced young attorney had to know that he was doing something wrong. I'm not saying he did know, but it would be shocking for Alex Acosta, even a 36-year-old prosecutor, to not know that you don't make deals with a sex offender without notifying those young girls who he abused sexually, who he was making this plea deal for. Also, that there would be a deal that would get rid of state charges, despite the fact he was on the federal side, and would allow Epstein to walk in and out of his business day in and day out. And one other thing that I think we're still actually paying for today if we want to get to the bottom of this, giving Epstein the room to destroy any video evidence, any audio evidence, any pictures, any evidence, all of his crimes. And that's exactly what he did. So I don't understand how even a young, inexperienced prosecutor could have made all of these mistakes.
Well, and I would submit to you, Joe, that there's one other fundamental mistake, which is seeing these crimes as crimes of prostitution as opposed to trafficking. You know, we heard from a number of the survivors at a press conference on the Hill about a couple of weeks ago, and one of them was a woman named Haley Robson, who said her life had been destroyed because in the past she had been described as a co-conspirator of Jeffrey Epstein, a person principally responsible for the recruitment of others. And Haley Robson really challenged us to think about her differently, that she was someone who herself had been trafficked, manipulated, and controlled by Jeffrey Epstein, and induced and coerced to bring to him sort of a never-ending supply of other young girls. Alex Acosta bought into a narrative where someone like Haley Robson was seen as a teenage prostitute, a willing participant in really what was her own victimization, as opposed to seeing this for what it was, a sex trafficking ring in which, as Haley's attorney has described it, Jeffrey Epstein was principally his own pimp and John at the same time. And so that framing of these issues, and I hope we've come a long way since 2007 and 2008, really led to the construct of that non-prosecution agreement that allowed Jeffrey Epstein not only to evade responsibility and participate in a work release program and destroy evidence, as you said, but also led to this narrowing of the investigation itself and a blaming of the victims. One of the reasons Alex Acosta told the Department of Justice that he sought this non-prosecution agreement was because he thought that the victims themselves had credibility issues. Why did he think that? Because he was seeing them as prostitutes and not as victims.